Ben, how's it going, man? Oh, did I lose him?
He looks frozen.
Okay. Yeah, I think you lost me for a second.
There we go.
Okay. Let me test. Okay. Sorry. I was trying to make sure. Sorry if that was really loud. I was trying to make sure the speakers or the microphone was still set up as my actual microphone and not my headphones.
So I guess, Phil, how does it feel like to not be towards the bottom?
It's a new feeling, man. I'm sure that'll come up, but it's really crazy.
Yeah.
Still kind of pinch myself. I feel like I'm still a little. Now I'm just gonna repeat myself later, but I'm still a little scared that the attack's gonna die off a little bit. But every game they have plenty of chances.
Thing about like it's I just wish
last year we couldn't attack for the life of us, you know.
Yeah.
The defense was good. What were you gonna say, Goose?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I just wish we had like something to hang our hat on. I mean, we create a lot of chances. I don't want to lose the good content until later, but yeah, like I don't know. There's also, is this on YouTube yet?
Yeah, we just went live. So yeah, I guess.
Okay, cool.
Just save it. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything.
Oh man.
Often, me and Mark like miscommunicate what day we mean.
Oh really?
Today, it's happened more than once. I feel like usually it's my fault. To be fair.
Well, it happens. It definitely happens.
Or it could be the time change. Confused everyone. That's possible.
Yeah. I did that too one time. I was setting up for a preview with one of the guys from Speedway Soccer Pod. And I'm like, hey, man, we're ready. Where you at? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm on, I think, Central Time Zone. I'm like, what do you mean Nashville's in Central Time Zone? And I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. Dang it.
It's not, is it? It's in Eastern, right?
Or no, at least where he is. He was in Central. And
that's right. I think it is. Because Memphis is in the Central, yeah.
Yeah, and like the back of my mind, I remembered it from last year, but I think I sent the message for about the pod like the middle of the day during lunch, so it just kind of slipped my memory. Good old time change.
I always get confused with the ones that are right on the border. Like, I'm still not sure Nashville is whether they're east or west or central. I mean,
let's see.
I think Ohio. I think Cincinnati is east.
The one that gets me is Phoenix, because half the time they're in the mountain and half the time they're in the Pacific.
Oh, they don't change?
No, they don't do daylight savings. So
that definitely get me.
Is that the whole state?
The whole state, yeah. They don't.
Okay, yeah.
I think there's them, and I think there's a section somewhere. I want to say in Iowa that doesn't either Iowa or Nebraska, somewhere in the Midwest that doesn't do the daylight savings. Supposedly Texas is looking at that as well.
That would be a very Texas thing to do. Not that I really know much about Texas people, but it sounds like a very like.
I think Indianapolis does that too. Actually, now that I think about it, just city though.
Huh. Oh yeah, I think I have heard that once or twice, maybe. That's it's definitely something to get used to. But
Nashville is in the Central.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Must be the closest to the changeover that I can think of.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Mark's coming. We'll wait.
Awesome. That works for me.
Yeah, it's got to be right on that. Yeah. Because looking at the time zone map.
Who does Foxtrot Pod? What's your first name if you hear this? I constantly forget. It's not Phil, is it? Because that would be ironic. No, Phil's the New Mexico. El Paso, I mean.
No, I think it's Lefty, right? I think he goes by Lefty. Oh, that's one of them.
Lefty/Chris.
Oh.
Hey, I get points for knowing half of it, right?
Well done.
I think a nickname is worth twice 2 points.
Oh, Mark, you made it.
Yeah. I was actually having, ironically enough, a soccer conversation with a coach. So
That's awesome.
Oh,
sorry.
coaches take precedent to us anyway. So we just pretend like we know about soccer, or at least I do. I don't know about anybody else, but
no, that's all of us. That's all everyone I know. Mark, do you have a microphone? Is it possible to turn it louder? I think you're a lot quieter than everyone else.
I can just talk up a little bit. How does this sound?
Yeah, it is a little better for sure.
Okay, hang on a second. I'm going to adjust here because I literally just grabbed my laptop and I thought I'd use the laptop mic. So I'll just talk loud. Is that okay?
Yeah. And I think bringing it closer even helped. I think that's good. That's good.
Okay, and then you got to see more of my fat head, but oh well.
I love it. Love that fat head. Okay. Oh no, no one cut that up and use it for the wrong thing. Mark, we're just gonna kind of roll with the punches on this one. I think it'll be easy to talk plenty long about all this stuff. So, and I think Goose has to leave in the next 45 minutes. Is that right?
I'm a little less strict time constraints. So yeah, we'll just see where the conversation goes.
Did your girlfriend just kind of say, I'd like you to be done by 10? Is that what we're working with right now? I'm just kidding.
That was a no comment.
No, I think it was the internet cut out there, but
That was Karma saying, hey, don't answer that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So yeah, we'll just roll with the punches. And then at the end, we may talk a little bit about the U20s. Cardiff, it's Cardiff City, right? Coming to town. Cardiff City.
Hey, what link should I be sharing with the Switchbacks crew that might want to watch this? God,
let me see here. I'm going to send it to your chat. Oh, that's the wrong one. Hold on a sec. And I did just, about 5-10 minutes ago, I tweeted it out from the USL show Twitter.
Oh, okay.
So if that doesn't work, it's on there as well.
Got it. I'm going to go ahead and shoot.
About 5-10 minutes ago, I tweeted.
So do I need to stay on Hangouts or do I go to YouTube?
Stay on Hangouts, or else the words you just heard would pop through, and it's on a pretty big delay.
Got it.
Make sure you don't open that up in the middle of the show, like I've done like 4 times.
I'm just making sure I didn't. I think we're good.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to hit record and we'll just kind of go with things.
Give me 30 seconds here because I'm literally just going to ping it on the Trailhead site. I'm on Facebook right now. Give me 30 seconds.
Yeah. No, take your time. I'm going to actually pull up the ad read I'm supposed to read because I always forget.
I'm on a straggler here. I'm sorry about that.
Very good.
What's my team called again? Switchbacks. That's it. Yeah.
Hey, you won this week, so at least you can hang your hat on that.
Oh my god!
Oh.
Victory of the season. Woo woo!
Here we go. Podcast sponsorship. Here we go.
Yeah, 2 of them you got to read, right?
Yes.
But they came out with a nice shirt today. $12.
Yeah, I bought it. You do have to pay shipping, but
yeah,
I bought it anyway. I like it. I've been trying to pick a good jersey for Pride Month, and I really regret not buying the St. Louis trainer last year because it was really good.
Mhm.
Ooh, yeah, I remember that one. What was it? Some taco company?
Yeah, Mission Taco.
Mission Taco. I was thinking it was Mission Taco, but I didn't want to get it wrong, I guess. But
Man, it was really good. I didn't get it, missed out. And then I was going to get the Sporting Kansas City one, and then every single team got the same jersey with their crest on it. Did you guys notice that?
yeah, that was so weird how they didn't all just promote them at the same time. I thought that was weird, at least. Like, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Sporting Kansas City has one. I mean, the Wizards connection, pride, everything else. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, wait, Cincinnati has it. Oh, wait, Vancouver has it. Like, someone missed the...
All right, cool. I'm done. My crap. All right, let me move over here so I can get situated. All right.
The weirdest thing about that, though, is that jersey, it looked like it belonged to Sporting Kansas City because the swoops look like their logo, kind of, you know?
Oh, yeah, that is true.
That was really cool, and it was fitting. And then I was like, wait, every team's using the exact same one. So it wasn't made for them. It was just like a stock jersey. So.
Yeah, silly template, I guess.
The new one I'm on to is the Richmond Kickers Pride one is really cool. So
I really like that one too. Yeah.
From this year? I haven't checked that one out yet.
Yeah, it's really cool. Speaking of, Harry, I actually didn't get the Fiesta jersey. They're out of those, right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They're nice jerseys.
All right, y'all, here we go.
Go.
Welcome, everybody, to the USL show. This is Phil, and you're listening to us thanks to the Beautiful Game Network. We're brought to you by Roughneck Scarves and now Golden Goal Press. We were just talking about the new Pride shirt that came out today, and it's posted with like a dark gray colored shirt. But once I clicked on that, it actually comes in like 12 different shirt colors you can get with that. So Golden Goal Press has got a pretty cool thing going on, and we'll talk about it probably more one of these episodes. But let's get to what we're talking about here first, because it's a special episode. I like to call it the therapy session. We picked out some of the teams that I did this, and part of it was because I wanted to bring in a bunch of good dudes that I know, and a lot of the good dudes that I know in soccer have some teams that aren't doing so well right now. And so I kind of put things together. These aren't the worst teams in the USL right now per se, but they're low in the rankings. They in the standings rather. They are all independent sides. They're all teams that have been around for more than a year. And again, they're all connected to good dudes in the BGN and extended soccer world of USL championships. So I'd like to welcome all these fellas now after I've talked about them for so long. First up, Harry was the first to sign on. You know him as @Ramen on Twitter. How's it going, Harry?
Well, I feel like I'm being called into the principal's office tonight. So
yeah, you keep calling me Principal Phil.
As you can tell, probably by that comment, I've been called to the principal's office or the boss's office a couple of times saying, hey, good and bad, but I need to see you. So here we are.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. Like, good to see you personally, but we got some things to talk about, pal. Next up, we got the soccer goose himself, Ben Goshorn. Ben, how's it going, buddy?
Doing pretty good. I guess I'm happy to be on the USL show again. Not necessarily happy to be a part of the Knights of the Sad table, but we're here. So
Knights of the Sad table. That's good.
It's the best thing I can come up with on short notice. So
no. I was about to ask, is that something I just don't know about in pop culture? But no, you came up with it. So that's good. Okay. Moving on, we have Mark. He's a part of a lot of different things that have to do with the Colorado Switchbacks. Last Word on Sports, the Colorado Springs version. Mark, why don't you tell us all the other things you're a part of?
It's too boring. Besides which, I can't be on this podcast today. I'm too traumatized. So I'll actually be talking with you guys today through the medium of a soccer.
Oh man, this is the first puppet we've had on. Does this Muppet have a name?
Hi guys! Boy, did the Switchbacks suck this year.
Okay, that's enough of that nonsense.
I don't know. It was starting to go insult the comic dog in a good way. It was good. That's a special
handle, so you know where to book me for any voice work.
That's pretty good. That's good. This is a special thing for the people who have decided to sign on to YouTube tonight. So there's a little bit of motivation. Maybe we'll bring out props in the future. So just
I'm going to make a Twitter account for the sock, so it will have a name by the end of the night. Everybody, just go ahead and ping me. What's my Twitter thing? I don't know. LWOS. Can't remember if there's underscore or not. I think it's just COS. Last word on soccer. Hit me up. Give me a name for the sock. We'll start an account and make it a thing.
I like it.
All right, cool.
Sounds good. Well done there. And I expected no less from you, Mark, so that's perfect. Let's jump in. Like I said, everyone's teams are not doing incredibly well. I do respect all of these teams. They are all independent teams that have done special things in different ways. All teams I respect in different ways. A lot of these teams have good things going on. And I don't know. I don't want to go into all that exactly, but I do want to maybe list off where they are in the standings. Let's just pull the Band-Aid off now. Charlotte Independence in the East are at 16th in the East. They have no wins in the last 5 that I'm seeing, 2 losses and 3 draws in the last 5. We'll get into specifics later. We're going to go down and we're going to look at San Antonio. FC is in 16th in the West, correspondingly. 3 losses in their last 5, 2 draws. Colorado Switchbacks have the most recent win of these 3 teams. However, they were preceded by 4 losses or more.
You know it's the Colorado Springs Switchbacks, right? Because you're gonna set Twitter ablaze.
Oh no! There's a thing with Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC?
Yeah,
you got to say
you always say Colorado Switchbacks, and it's Colorado Springs Switchbacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not surprised that people get upset about that. First of all, second of all, I was going to ask you earlier today. I mean, I'm looking at all the team names, and it's got to be the most syllables in a soccer name in the USL, right?
Probably. I mean, but you're among friends here, so you can call them Colorado Switchbacks if you want. Colorado Springs is fine. You know, if you want to go shorter, Rapids B team, that would work.
That won't make
it really the B team though, because listening to your podcaster here, they seem to be more Rapids Academy team as far as the players that they're getting.
Well, I'm sure we'll come to that.
We will. Let's back it up though. Let's go individually. Let's kind of talk about our teams individually. So Goose, let's start with your team. A team that I was super excited about in the beginning of the season. The roster looks good to me personally. Let's hear what you have to say about your team so far.
Yeah, it's been, I guess we can even take a step back from the roster and say that there was a big change going into this season based on who we hired and the fact that we got a new coach. In the offseason, we promoted, I guess you could say, our only ever head coach in club history to GM. And then in that same breath, hired a coach who hadn't had any head coaching experience in the game of soccer or football or whatever you want to call it. And Jim McGinnis, his main course of notoriety, he's really a legend in Ireland, is being a Gaelic football coach. So that was a little bit interesting. It definitely made it so that the season wasn't going to be boring. For better or worse, we're in the worst stage now. Hopefully the better will come. But yeah, like you said, as the offseason continued to move on, we brought back Enzo Martinez, we brought back some key players, and we assembled a pretty strong roster, I felt like. I would say easily the strongest roster we've ever had. As far as name recognition, skill. I mean, there's some older players being Damo Duro and things like that. Steven Teacoat is an older center back as well that's been well-traveled in the entire world, really. So there were some pieces that made me really excited. And then the season started. And yeah, it's just been part of me at the beginning of the season felt like our club just had things go wrong. Like it just felt like there was a dark cloud over Charlotte. Maybe somebody kicked over and I don't know, just something was not going right. And I was like, well, it's got to get better eventually. I even happened to say when we lost to the Florida Soccer Soldiers that it couldn't get worse. And then we played Ottawa and we lost 4-1 and lost 2 men to a red card. So it did. So, yeah, that kind of brings us to where we are now in some ways.
Can I back you up just a little bit? I thought McGuinness was part of Celtic in Ireland too, or in Scotland.
Yeah. So essentially what happened is, and I know way more than I should because I read his biography and things like that, but he was a legend in the Gaelic football world, took a small Donegal club and won an All-Ireland trophy, which has never been done before there. After that, he basically, by happenstance, started working with Celtic as a psychiatrist, essentially, for the players. And then he did have an assistant coaching stint in China. I'm forgetting his name, but I think it was, I couldn't even tell you the club, to be honest with you either. But yeah, he was an assistant coach for a club over there for a very short time, I think 6 months. And then basically came back to then look to get a head coaching position somewhere, which happened to be us. So there's been some bumps along the road. The heaviest bump obviously being really losing to Florida Soccer Soldiers, which, for those that don't know, is a UPSL squad, which is a amateur club. And yeah, that happened.
But it's how you lost, though.
Oh yeah, that's the thing too. Is like, it's been a very trying soccer season. Yeah. And I'm an Arsenal fan too, so that's been great too. I mean, yeah, it's been fantastic. But this is not a Premier League show, so.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the Soccer Soldiers looked pretty decent in their following game. I know they got knocked out. I forgot who they played, but they looked pretty good. So they're a good team. So you didn't lose against a bad team by any means, and it did go to penalties. Blah 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 blah. We won't twist the knife any more than Harry just did.
But that's the point of that game, though, is it's how they lost. It's because you can lose to a UPSL team, and does it suck? Yeah. But it's how they lost the game that rubs that salt in that wound, and it's harder to get over, in my opinion.
Well, and maybe that gets to something too. Is does that kind of, that's what I was going to go to next. Is, can we explain this? Are there like little things that stick out where you're like, oh yeah, this is probably the problem? Are there several things? In that case, is it perhaps the fight wasn't there to overcome a team that did get a few good shots and score some goals here and there?
Yeah, it's tough because, I mean, we have some veteran players being Damo Duro, Stephen Teacoat, and some journeyman players as well. But we do have some players, Jorge Herrera, Joel Johnson, Alex Martinez, and two that really have been with this club for an extended period of time and really wear that crest with pride. Not to say that Damo Duro and Stephen Teacoat don't, and other players like that don't, but it's just it's difficult to figure out what the problem is, other than it just feels like we don't have an identity on the field. And I mean, we've had stretches. I mean, even the very first game against Indy 11, we did not start well. I think we went down 2-0 in 30-ish minutes. That feels like such a long time ago, but we were down 3-0 at one point and pulled back 2 goals, and it almost felt like we were going to get an extra goal in there. For a certain stretch of the season, we did not start well, and we would come back in the latter stages of matches. We've kind of flipped that script in some ways, because that Ottawa match I referenced, we were up 1-0 in the first 30 minutes, and we looked like a pretty solid squad. I was maybe unnecessarily optimistic about it. And then Ottawa started to play. They scored their first goal. They scored another goal in, I think, maybe 90 seconds after the fact. And it really just, it feels like there's not a lot of belief, unfortunately. And it's really tough to watch because you see there's certain stretches where we look like a squad that should absolutely make the playoffs. And based on the roster and on paper, we should make the playoffs. We should be fighting for a pretty decent seed. And it's just not coming together. We still have really yet, other than the one win of the season against Bethlehem Steel, put together a full 90 of consistent soccer. So yeah.
I'm with you too. I think for a while Charlotte was like the number one team that was like, well, they've lost a few, and they're going to definitely bounce back because, again, the roster and you're right about those flashes. Some of the flashes of really good soccer, especially in the attack, you'd be like, wow, they got a lot of potential. It just hasn't been unlocked yet, haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
And so we're still there kind of waiting. But the potential is definitely there, as we've talked about. Harry, I know you and I talked, I was trying to study up for another show that I was on, but we talked about your team extensively, and you had a lot of pretty concrete thoughts on what you thought was going wrong. Can you kind of fill us in on San Antonio a bit?
Yeah, so for San Antonio, where do we start? So they are the Tacoma on the road, it seems like. They're 0-6 this year with, a -9 goal difference. Starting out, one of their star players that they brought in the off season from Swope Park, Sporting Kansas City, Amir Didic, played 2 games and then was released, mutual decision, and he's playing with Edmonton up in the Canadian Premier League. Let's see here.
I called that absolutely wrong. I was like, going to change that roster, and I was so wrong.
Well, I think the talent's there. It's like Goose is saying. If you look at on paper, the talent's there, but you could have said that last year as well, and they underperformed. I think the fan base is getting a little frustrated, because they brought back, they brought back talent. Billy Forbes came back, which he's a fan favorite, but I don't know if it translates well. They brought in Lance Lang, who was on loan last year. They signed him, but those two play the same position. So I don't understand the logic in that. I just, for whatever reason at this point, it's not meshing on the field, because you look at the talent. At home they're pretty competitive. They played Phoenix and they should have won outside of a Jason Johnson last minute goal at the death at the start of the season. When they played the Switchbacks, it was a pretty even game, and then was it Cesar Romero came in and the 85th 84th minute, super late, and got a goal there. They were up 2-0 against the Real Monarchs in Salt Lake, and then in the first 10 minutes had 2 PKs called against them, and then ended up losing 3-2. And then just recently they've just fell apart. They got blown out in RGV, which is a rival. The Open Cup, they absolutely got destroyed by the Bold, and it was 4-2, but it wasn't even that close. They went.
I think some of the things you talked about before too were, some in the playmaking position, or the 10, or even in the central midfield, that, Bryant is out. We all like Bryant, but I think someone's been hurt, and there's just like no connection, perhaps being one of the thoughts. Who are the people you were talking about there?
So Bryant's been out. He hasn't. He played in. I want to say he played in the Open Cup against Austin, and then he played last week against Sacramento. He subbed on. That was his first action all year. But they've got Barnby in the middle. Perano, the young Argentinian. I think he's Argentinian, if memory serves me, number 19. He's a firecracker. That unfortunately holds on to the ball a little bit too long for that here, but. To me, the wing play is, for San Antonio, they go up the wings and they cross it in. And the problem is, they've only got one person, Ever Guzman typically in the box. Although they do have Jameson on the line, that's was loaned down from the Galaxy. They brought in Gomez, another South American talent. So the talent's there, but it's just not connecting. And when it comes to the offensive side, they could have a great night offensively, but then the defense screws up and they make the silly mistakes that end up costing them games. So, if you look at it on paper, there's no reason why San Antonio should be where they're at, because they've invested in the team, the players have it, but it's got to a point where you're starting to wonder if it's a locker room issue where, we're starting to hear unconfirmed reports, from people that are around the team that maybe it's, more of an individual team and not an actual team that, hang out and enjoy time together. And if that's the case, it's going to be a long season, because I don't know how you recover from that, at this time.
Hey, Henry, I think you need this more than I do.
Hey, I got mine right here. It's not a puppet, but I got my little thing here where I can wipe the tears away. I came prepared.
Yeah. Mark, why don't you lead us in? Your team I know the least about, to be honest with you. My team went back to the East. I haven't been keeping up on the West that much, and I have seen you guys play. Seems like a guy who I like to follow on Instagram, Jordan Burt, has been holding that team together a little bit, huh?
Yeah, well, you really should pay more attention to the West because you'll be back here again next season.
Yeah, right. I should. You're right. I should start studying.
Yeah, it has been. The one thing about sporting the switchbacks is it's never boring. We're into our 5th season, and every season has been distinct, and it's been defined by one thing or another. The first season, we were these scrappy underdogs that nobody knew anything about, who were free scoring and surprised everybody. Second year, we kind of consolidated that position and added even some more robustness to our defense, and really should have challenged for the certainly the Western Conference title at that point. Maybe not the whole bag of marbles, but certainly we should have done a little better than we did. The third season ended up being something akin to what Harry was describing in San Antonio, in that we had oodles of talent. I mean, arguably the most talented roster we've ever seen. But it was very fractured, lots and lots of individuals. So every season has really been defined by something very distinct. And it's been the thread that's bound everything together. This season, if you were to summarize the Switchbacks season so far, 13, 14 games in, you'd have to say Rapids affiliation. Mm-hmm. That's the thing which is underscoring, defining, and perhaps derailing our season maybe more than anything else. And as Harry mentioned earlier, we're struggling right now because we're seeing a lot of academy players come in. That wasn't the plan. I don't think it was the deal. And Switchbacks fans are left scratching their heads trying to work out exactly what's going on. We were sold a bill of goods that was essentially 4 or 5 Rapids players who'd be with us season long, which would be further supplemented by a handful of other Rapids players who'd be rotating in and out based upon field time, recovering from injuries. Players are trying to get their feet under them because they're new to the organization. We're not seeing any of that. We're seeing what looks like darts being thrown in the dark. Mm-hmm. It's causing a great deal of frustration, and more than that, it's the team are struggling with their identity. So Jordan Burt has been holding them together, 4 goals in 13 games. Shea Malcolm's pitched in with 3, and then beyond those guys, everybody's on a single goal. And it's interesting, though, because they've not been playing that badly. Jordan Schweitzer has had another really solid season. Saeed Robinson, when he's been fit, has also, been terrorizing defenses as per usual, using his pace. Alex Milano, when he gets time on the field, has shown himself to be a really skilled number 10. So, again, like Gary was saying, not to just be an echo chamber here, but we have the talent. We're tripping over our own feet right now. And until that situation with the Rapids has been resolved, I'm not sure the situation is going to get much better. But until the Rapids themselves sort out their own season, I think we're going to get this byproduct of, you know what, guys, you're going to take what you're given, because right now the mama ship's in trouble.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But my question is, and I guess this would be more with Goose, because I think last year last few years they've been affiliated with Charlotte, and they've had that consistent, 3, 4, 5 players that have been loaned down, right?
Yeah. It's interesting that it feels like, based on what you've been saying, Mark, that it feels like that they're being maybe forced to play certain players, because we definitely felt that way in Charlotte too. Whether it was certain players.
It's the opposite.
Oh, is it? Okay.
In that we're not having access to anybody.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's not fair. That's not fair. We have had a couple of players from the Rapids, but we haven't had as many players as we were led to believe would be there for the duration that we were led to believe they'd be there for. I think maybe it's the reverse to the situation you had.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was the most troubling part of it for us, to be honest with you, was that when it seemed like whenever a player did too well, we were going to lose him. So you wanted them to do good, but not do too well.
We're not struggling with that, Goose.
I guess I can't sympathize with you too much then. I tried offering you a shoulder, and it just...
If only we had players that were doing too well.
Well, I was going to say, Mark, that I feel like there is perhaps some comfort, and you can legitimately point your finger at something and say, this is the problem. To me, there would be some comfort in that. And I even kind of heard some of that from you, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I want to be clear. And I know we're going to come on to talking about coaches here in a minute, because, all of our coaches are in a precarious position. Some have been under the spotlight here in the recent weeks, and it's going to be interesting to talk about how they've responded to that attention, that additional attention. But setting coaches aside for a moment, I don't know that anyone's necessarily to blame for what's happening with the switchbacks right now. I think at the beginning of the season, there was a real desire to execute the plan as it was defined, right? You would have 4 or 5 players come down and stay with you this season. We'll supplement those 4 or 5 with a couple of other players. Our expectation was that at least a third of the roster was going to be made up by Rapids players that would, by and large, be with us for most of the season. And then the Rapids season began. And what are the Rapids now? 2 games. I think they've won 2 games all year so far. Didn't get their first win until a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And so they're really struggling. And I think because they're struggling, they're focusing on themselves first. And it's hard to be critical of that. But it's left the switchbacks in a real bind, because we just don't have enough quality on our own roster. We certainly don't have the depth in players to cover the rapid departures. So it's just a kind of a coming. It's a perfect storm, a perfect ugly storm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely made worse by that. I think, Mark, you mentioned coaches. I think we should move to that. Is Harry? We heard a lot from Ben about McGinnis and where he came from, and we'll come back to that. But Harry, can you give us some background on how long your coach has been there? I'm so bad with names, so I don't even know.
Coach Powell, Darren Powell. So he's been with us. He came from Orlando Academy program where he was running it through there. So his strength is definitely in the academy, and I think you see that with the San Antonio FC Academy. In my opinion, it's one of the best in USL. I know there's a couple others out there, but it's for being year 2, year 3, it's doing very, very well. So on that aspect of it, plus we've got 3 players that came through either through the EPT program where they were too old when it started, but they still trained with it. In Ethan Bryant and Jose Gallegos on there, and then they signed Leo Torres from the U15 team this year to an actual professional contract. So from that aspect, it's great on there. Where I think the fans' frustration with Coach Powell is when we had Sebastian Ikebaga, he was able to install his defense. You had Diego in the back because Matt Cardone got hurt. I think game 2, game 3. In there, and then Diego stepped in and was goalkeeper of the year. Sebastian was the defensive player of the year that ended up signing with NYCFC for that here. So that second year everything came together. They got off to such a great start. The issue is since then the defense hasn't been as good, and and the tactics side and the substitution. I know we all probably complain about substitutions, and patterns and stuff like that. It's just what we do. But the tactics, it almost to a point where what San Antonio is going to do. They're going to go up on the side of Billy or Lance. They're going to cross it in, and if you pack the box, you can clear it, and that's it. When they were playing RGV, the announcers were talking about there's no vertical runs. They were calling out Coach Powell for the lack of the changes, the tactical changes on it. And I think from a fan base side, that's the frustration we're seeing is, okay, hey, and Chris Hockman, if you follow him, has put it on Twitter week after week. The crosses just aren't working, so try something different. And he's tried meshing the lineups a little bit, changing it, but it's still the same. It's the same tactics no matter the lineup. So, and at this point, San Antonio's, we have an NASL championship. We've had good years and we've had crappy years with the Scorpions. And, you thought with SS&E coming in, the money behind them, and I know there was the MLS push that, unfortunately wasn't successful for various reasons. You still would have thought that they would have been able to put a competitive team on the pitch, and with it being a results business, they're not getting that. And I think what emphasizes it is Tim Howe at the Crocketeers annual meeting, early, before the season started, said, "Hey, last year was unacceptable. We won't accept that." Well, we're worse than we were last year at this time. So
yeah,
it's kind of reaching to a point here. However, if he wasn't released at this point, you have to wonder if they're just going to ride out the season and whatever it is, just for the fact that, we lost to RGV, we lost to the Bold, we lost to Sacramento. Now they were all on the road, but they were all very convincing. So, I guess this weekend could be a big week, but we will see.
I'd say that's the most publicly, to say that publicly, that's the most public hot seat for sure that I can think of in the USL. I didn't realize that about him. He sounds like he was called out last year, and like you said, it's worse now than it was last year.
Well, they thought it was more, and to me, this goes back to the locker room. Now there's been some reports that Coach Powell is hard to work with. I don't know if that's the proper term, but he's a hard coach, and players have left, mutually. Because we've had 3 players leave in the last 2 years in season, which I think is a little bit higher than higher average than normal.
Well, I will say that one thing that's not in your favor is you listed some of the best players you guys have had have gone, and Diego's gone and Ibiaga, those two together, and that defense, like you said, was pretty killer. But Pasher's come through. You've had a lot of good attackers, and
Chris Tierpak, he scored. He's player of the week this year. Basically. He got a red card, and as he was walking off the field, you knew he was done.
I remember that.
So it's just certain things like that to where we don't know all the inner workings, but there's been enough rumblings from past players that have left that makes you wonder how tough he is in the locker room, or what exactly is that missing piece. Because the one consistent thing, because they've changed players. The other thing that's kind of pushes, a little bit more of the fans here is Coach Alan Marcina, who won the NASL championship with the Scorpions, was with Des Moines, was with Rayo. Okay, so he's got a successful coaching history. He's the assistant coach this year. So unlike in the past, there's actually, if there is a change, there is somebody that does have belief in, does have history in San Antonio that can get a proven result. And he did it mid-season, when Tim Hankinson was let go of the Scorpions. So I'm sure that kind of feeds into it, but it's
a possibility for sure. I was kind of getting to, it is hard to get a good team together and then hold on to it in the USL. We're seeing, especially these MLS teams that are going up, are about to, they kind of steal as many of the best players in the USL as they can before they go. Mark, do you see any of that with your team? And even makes you wonder with the new partnership and relying on loans from an MLS side, were they trying to save money in that regard? I don't know how you feel about the personnel on your team other than the weird relationship with the Rapids.
Were they trying to save money? They were trying to make themselves more competitive in through that affiliation. The Switchbacks, I think everyone knows this. It's been touted time and time again. Second smallest market in the USL behind Reno. Our gates tend to be pretty low, about 3,000, 3,500. We've seen bigger gates, but our average gates are right around there. This year, actually, I think maybe a little smaller, which is frustrating. And so we don't have a big budget, and it's difficult to buy both quality and depth. It was kind of a running joke these last few seasons that we've never taken a full bench on the road with us. Mm-hmm. So part of the reason that we want to have this affiliation was to be able to bolster the roster overall, provide that depth, but also, if a third of your roster is on somebody else's bill, right? Somebody else is paying for that. That means you've got X amount of money now going to fewer players, which should enable you to increase the quality of those players you're paying for. So it looked like an all ends up win, but because the issue that the Rapids have had with the MLS season so far and the impact that's had on the Switchbacks, and with us seeing more academy players than Rapids players, it's just been funky. And you can see it starting to wear on Coach Tritchu. There's been a lot of talk. Certainly last season. There was a little bit of talk that end of 2017, but 2018 that the level really kicked up, and a lot on the forums this year in regards to Steve Tritchu, fans saying that, he's had his time. He's the longest serving coach in the USL now. He's been with the Switchbacks all 5 years. He's done. His ideas are done. He's burnt out. It's time to move on. It's time for a fresh face. I might shock any Switchbacks fans who are watching this by saying, I'm not saying there isn't merit in having that conversation and having that discussion, in always continuing to hold your coaches accountable, but Tritchu is not the problem. I was having a conversation with somebody who will remain nameless in the media here in town recently. I don't want to throw them under a bus, but I was saying, would a young coach with different ideas coming in, would he be able to get more out of this group of players in these circumstances? And the answer I proposed was maybe, possibly, unlikely. I just don't think they would. I think Tritchu is doing the very best he can, and probably the best any coach could do under these circumstances. So I just think we find ourselves in a situation where, until the situation with the Rapids improves, unfortunately the Switchbacks are bound now to them. Our situation isn't going to improve because we're not going to see more money. We're not suddenly going to see an influx of more seasoned players. Changing coach probably isn't going to do a whole heck of a lot. So the only variable here that can improve and in turn, raise all ships is if the Rapids season were to improve.
Mm-hmm. Man, that sucks to rely on another team.
Do you remember the good old days when I used to come on this show and you guys used to say, "Hey, why aren't you affiliated with the Rapids?"
Yeah, and I was going to say
that. Proud of being independent. We got this.
Yeah. We used to make fun of how Charlotte was affiliated and you guys weren't. It just never made sense. And here we are. It finally happened. And gosh, I'm sorry.
It's really hard to point the finger because, again, I think people like best intentions at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And then real life kicked in.
Well, and yeah, I would even say everyone's moving toward in MLS. They're looking to bring up the kids and sell them off. And the Rapids have a decent amount and they're probably trying to get them in there. And before you put them in MLS, you want to put them in the USL, but you guys don't want them in that state of affairs, And so that's a tough place to be. I don't know if that's part of it, but I know that's occurred to me that maybe there's a little bit of that. If they can't send the kids to you, then where should we send them?
But I don't think the problem with the Rapids is they don't have the depth on their own side to where
that's definitely true.
That's unfortunately it's the worst time for this to switch through. is because they're, the Rapids, have probably the worst roster in MLS.
Yeah.
And so that's unfortunately going to filter down to the switchbacks. If they don't have quality depth up there, they may be running, academy level kids, for the end of their bench, compared to, 2-3 years ago where they had a little, I'm not saying much greater, but where they had a better roster. So that's the unfortunate thing with the Rapids this year.
You're relying on a Kroenke team.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, that's a whole separate discussion.
Oh, what were you going to say, Mark?
I was going to say it's really interesting that typically Tritchu doesn't engage with the media other than to give kind of his stock quotes after a game. Every now and then he gets a little prickly if he feels like the officials have done us wrong. But he has really come out swinging in the last couple of weeks. And I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the articles in front of me, but essentially saying, you know what, I'm doing the best I can with what I have. My resources are threadbare. And we're overworking the guys here. These guys are having to play game after game after game. If the club feel like they can do better, I guess they can fire me. I mean, that's up to them. And it's kind of interesting. And I am paraphrasing, but anyone can go online and Google, the Colorado Springs Gazette and read those quotes in Tritchu. That's essentially what he's saying. And so, yeah, I think people do need to stop and take stock and think, okay, so were they to fire him, what next?
Yeah.
Because that's not the bottleneck.
To me, it was so bad that when you guys played FC Denver, that you had concerns whether you were even going to be able to fill out the roster in time because of the loanies from the Rapids weren't going to be able to do. You had people that were injured, so there was concerns. Hey, are we even going to be able to field a competitive team at the start of the Open Cup?
Yeah, we were good there because Roland Vargish, Jason Smith, and myself, we brought our coats that night. So
there you go. Ben, let's swing back to you a little bit. And these guys are talking about their coaches. Maybe perhaps in Harry's case, Mark is saying, can we do any better? I love that thought process. And I mean, you guys just got this. You just got Jim. Do you get rid of him Trekkie style, like in St. Louis, or do you give him a longer shot? Or?
It's tough because when we brought him in the stage of where for context sake, for those that may not know, we play in the suburbs right now, and we've had this carrot of playing in downtown, or what we call uptown here in Charlotte. A stadium has been there the entire time. We just haven't been able to play on it because the walls where the seats are just happen to make it so you can't play soccer there. So you have to renovate it. It's finally been renovated. Or going to be renovated. We've got technically like a 3-year plan that we're going to be playing in a couple years up in that stadium. So another facet of McGinnis coming in was to essentially prepare for that stage. And if I'm not mistaken, he signed a 3-year contract. So we're kind of in there for the long haul. And it's been interesting as a fan of his, because a fan of the club and his by default, because there's been a lot of mystery with him because he hasn't been a head coach before. And as far as what tactics he wants to play, what formation he wants to play, what philosophy he wants to entail. For those that may not know, Gaelic football, because I didn't know this, has basically no correlation to soccer, other than the football name. And I think the ball is round. It could be a weird type of shape that's not round. But there's very not
for us, Goose. Thanks for clearing that up for us.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just it's been difficult because you don't know what tactic he's going to play. And we also brought in a roster very late. I want to say into the first week of the season, we had maybe 13, 15 players on the roster. So we kind of had a switchbacks issue of filling out the bench. We just didn't have an affiliation to kind of help us out too, which I guess having the Rapids wouldn't have helped this year. So that's kind of nice to know. But
it sound like almost like you almost have, he was a psychological coach of some sort or psychiatrist.
Yeah. He's got his master in psychology. So
he sounds like almost like we got Jurgen Klinsmann at the helm of Charlotte, And so I'm wondering if you are stuck with him for 3 years, that may not be the worst thing. If Mike Jeffries, who I very much respect, comes down and takes back over, and he's kind of there as the psychological pusher, perhaps during training.
It's that's the other facet that makes it really interesting because, like I alluded to previously, we don't really seem to have much of an identity, to be honest with you. We've already changed formations at least once, pretty drastically from a back 4 to a back 3 now. But there's lots of movement going on there, and we've brought in some extra players to play a different type of style as well. And quite frankly, it just has not helped, in all honesty. But going on what you said there with Jeffries, it would on paper be very easy to just, okay, we're going to scrap the McGinnis project, go back to Jeffries. Even if Jeffries wants to be in that GM role, which he very well could be, and I think he hasn't done a bad job of formulating this roster, we have an assistant coach in Dave Dixon, who was an assistant coach with Indy 11 the year before and won the, at the time, PDL, now League Two championship with the Charlotte Eagles in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So we have options, which makes it even more, I guess, difficult as a fan. But it's just, I can't foresee a scenario in the season that we let go of McGinnis solely based on an optics perspective. But it's just tough. I mean, because I didn't see it getting any worse than it was after losing to Florida Soccer Soldiers. And it did. And at this point, it's just, you wonder what it would take, unfortunately. And at this point, too, I mean, I said this early on. I want to say after we lost to, maybe before the North Carolina FC game, that we lost 3-0. But you wonder what that morale in the locker room is like when you're really close in certain games, but you're not getting enough, and just certain things aren't going right, especially considering you have a lot of new faces on the roster. So it's just, you wonder. I don't know what it would take to make a change, to be honest with you, mid-season, but I never have been in a negative perspective to say that, okay, that's what needs to happen. We need to get rid of the manager, reset, and take what we can. But it's,
that's what I'm getting at with Mark earlier, is that thank God and goodness that he's got this thing he can point out and be like, well, this is a blaring, obvious problem. And I think for the most part, that's not the case for teams that are losing. You can't put your finger on one definite thing until pretty late in the season. And so, I'm doing this show for a reason. I come from a team in St. Louis that has had three losing seasons, not making the playoffs. And so I'm well versed in this situation. We did that thing I was kind of alluding to, that we had Preki for a year. We thought he was going to solve all of our problems. It was a disaster, and they got rid of him after 1 year of coaching. That's not typically something you want to do. But at some point, if you know something's wrong and you know what the problem is, sometimes it's better to just, cut ties and fix it as soon as you can, and sooner the better. So we're in different camps in this way, and it's too early in the season, I think, to make any really large decisions like we're talking about. But one thing that happened last year is I like to kind of cite. I've always liked the coach over in Ottawa right now, who was at Swope Park the year before. They did terrible throughout the beginning of the year. He wanted to play possession style and didn't have the personnel to do it. They lost a lot of games. They kind of stopped the bleeding by bringing in some center backs. But in the end of the season, they either did or all very close to making the playoffs. And they kind of made a crawling back situation. And I would say that none of your teams are outside of that realm of possibility. And in St. Louis, we started out really badly in the beginning of last year, and there were some really disappointing stretches. That locker room never lost faith, and that's something that's big here. And so, Harry, you're kind of talking about how maybe that's a problem that the locker room's maybe not in and may not make that kind of recovery. But recoveries have happened, and they
Right.
come in different forms and functions, and all of you have the roster to make some kind of a comeback at some point. I guess let's just have open forum on how do you climb back, and how do you think your team can do it?
So my counter to that is I think it's a completely different league right now. Because if you look in the depth, especially in the West, you're going to have to go on a pretty extended run to be able to start to make up, make up the runs. And you look at the teams; they're quality teams. Now, you got Sacramento, that's 12th, 13th, or 11th right now. RGV, Vegas, they're kind of questionable teams, but you've got to be able to jump them, as well. And and I know in the East, I think it's a little bit more top heavy, than the West is. But I just think that I just think, unlike years past where you could get off to a slow start and you had time to recover, and I know they have the 2 extra spots for the wild card. I don't know if it's that easy to do the recovery anymore, just because the depth, and which is a great thing for the league. It's they're barring major injuries and stuff like, call-ups, from the 2 teams and stuff like that. I don't think it's as easy as it was a couple of years ago to be able to get off to that slow start and then recover. Because I think the first year of the Switchbacks, they had a slow start, and then they run on an incredible run over the summer. I think it would take almost that type of run to be able to get into a solid playoff position.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are getting some players back though too. Do you think with a healthy team, you guys could kind of get accustomed to each other and make a run, or do you think it'd be pretty hard to do it at this point?
I think the talent's there, and we're only 13 games in on a 34 game, so there's still 20 plus games left.
Yeah.
The issue is there's a lot of teams that you got Tulsa, that's overperforming compared to last year.
Mm-hmm.
RGV, I think, is better than what they were last year. You got New Mexico, El Paso, that have came in that are very solid. So you keep adding solid teams, and as much as I hate to say, San Antonio is probably going to bring in some quality depth, but and this is where unfortunately it's going to hurt Mark's team is. You're going to have these independent teams. You're going to have, that's going to say, okay, hey, we need to go out and get X, to be able to fill this role, to be able to take that next step. But you've got the other, 10 teams that are ahead of you that are also going to be doing the same thing. And we all know winning fixes everything, so if you can get on a nice run, then the discussion we're having is mute. But you've got to be able to build that confidence. And right now, I think in all 3 locker rooms, that's the issue, is there's not the belief, that they can do it now. You get on a 2-3 week run where everything clicks, everything changes. But
yeah, Mark, what do you think? And what do you think it would look like if you guys were kind of claw back to maybe the number 10 playing spot by the end of the season? Ouch.
I mean, I just don't. I don't want to say it's not feasible, but I don't think we should be looking that far ahead. Nothing's going to change for us dramatically here in the next couple of weeks. This affiliation was always going to be challenging in year 1, even if all the pieces fell in place as it was described pre-season. Because, when you're in a new relationship, it typically takes a while, right? For it to gel and for everybody to kind of understand how it all fits together and make sense for both organizations. So even if it were perfect, I think we'd still have our challenges. I think what the Switchbacks need to focus on is putting one foot in front of another right now. They got themselves a good win. They've been playing some decent football. They don't suck. They really don't. Their results do, but they don't. And I think they just need to focus on putting one foot in front of another. We've got a victory. Let's get another one. Like Harry said, if we can get 2 or 3 wins under our belt, winning may not cure everything, but it certainly does help. And if we can get that momentum going, then I think we could end up with, and with a decent season and green shoots that could lead to better things next year with this affiliation.
Mm-hmm. Ben, you're kind of the opposite problem of personnel. It seems like maybe if they get their tactics in line, that Charlotte can make a pretty good run, I think.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that can really, I guess you could say, improve and jumpstart the team is belief, kind of like what Harry said. And also Enzo Martinez. He has yet to score a goal this year. Hasn't scored a goal in quite some time. So I think he's gotten a number of assists. I think he's got 4 or 5 on the season, which was high up there in the league ranking. And he's been much more of a facilitator than an attacker in some ways. But I think Enzo is as many of you know, a fiery player. And I think he's a player that people can rally behind on the squad. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of shoring up the defense, quite honestly. And then
he
froze.
Oh, and then what? Don't leave us hanging.
We knew where he was going, though. I think he's making a really good point. I do want to throw in a stat that Alan Underwood just put in the chat a while ago, actually. But from 3rd place to 16th place is only 8 points in the West.
In the West, yeah.
That's not bad at all. The same spread in the East is 14 points. Okay, so Mark and Harry, that actually bodes well for your team. Sorry, we lost you, Goose, but we're going to move on because I think we got what you were getting at. And it was really, really good. I think you're right. I think Enzo's going to be a big part of that and could really be a catalyst for change there. Finishing up, we are getting toward the end, but I think we need to end. I said this was a therapy session. And again, I love all of the clubs you guys are a part of. And I think there's a lot in your future. And in Harry's case, we'll start with you, Harry, because you guys have one of the best stadiums in the USL.
Mm-hmm.
You got a great fan base. Let's talk about how this is affecting your fan base. Mark touched on it, but Harry, tell me about the San Antonio fans and where they are right now. But then let's also finish with just the best thing about your club before we close, and maybe also say where people can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, so I'll start. You can find me on Twitter at RAMINCOL. I also do the SA Soccer Roundtable as well podcast here with a couple other guys that we do basically this type of show about San Antonio and also the other UPSL and lower level teams, men's and women's teams. So it's a lot of fun. The stadium and atmosphere. I think from a San Antonio perspective, just looking at it. If you look at it from when SSNE took over, there was the big push for MLS and everything was going great. And then Austin FC came in and then the record's kind of gone down. So I think as a fan base, we're trying to figure out, hey, where's bottom? So that way you can, find your feet and start to rebound. As far as the stadium, it's an older stadium now. I think it's 8-9 years old. But I think it's still one of the best ones, especially, in USL where the action's right there. Attendance is down. This will probably be the first year, even going back to the Scorpions years, where San Antonio is not in the top 10 when it comes attendance-wise for Division II. So that's kind of a hard pill to swallow as a fan. But I think that's also the best thing, as a fan. I think we've got probably a good 3,000 to 4,000 fans that are core fans. That come, which for D2 is a solid base. For that here, we're passionate. There's probably about 5 to 10 of us that will travel to most throughout the season, most games. So usually there's always 1 or 2 fans that travel. Either I know I met Mark up in the Springs. I know the Czechs have been up there. We've been to Phoenix. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to St. Louis, but that'll be soon. So to me, the fans are the best, part of the team right now. And then I also think the desire for the city to see them successful, because we've had the Spurs been successful for so long. So they've got the track history to do it. It's just a matter of finding that missing piece to be able to plug it back in, but. I know we all complain and grumble about, hey, the world is ending, but I think if you really look into it, San Antonio, the reason why San Antonio cares, the reason why we're so vocal, is because we do care, and we there is that passionate fan base, which compared to some other teams, especially the MLS2 teams that are used to being at the bottom. I think that's really kind of the best thing, and I know St. Louis has that same type of fan base, and the Switchbacks as well. I'm not in the East, so I don't know a lot on the Charlotte side, outside of Ben and what I see on social media. So, I don't know how they compare.
Down like crazy last year, and now look at them. So there's definitely a bright future for all of us in theory. Mark, I would say Louisville gets all their attention for their new stadium. That's going to be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. But next in line, in my opinion, is Colorado Springs. Switchbacks FC has a brand new, basically a whole thing is coming, right?
Yeah. Your question was, what do you think is the best thing about your club, or all the best things about your club? I think the best is yet to come.
Mm-hmm.
If we're able to retain the core group of the guys in this roster, if we're able to keep hold of Jordan Burt, if we're able to keep hold of Jordan Schweitzer, if we're able to keep hold of Mike Seth and Ish Jome, and then add quality again next season, and firm up this affiliation, recognize what went wrong, what didn't work for either club really, and what we can do better this next year. And then add to that mix the fact we're going to have a gorgeous new stadium, purpose-built stadium this next season. I think the best is yet to come. We have great fans, and we don't have a particularly big fan base, but we have a fervent core.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think you put all those things together, and let's have a stronger season as we can this year, but let's also recognize that we've got an exciting season coming next year.
I do have a question for you, Mark. With the new stadium, I think you said it's coming next year or 2021. I forget which one it's coming. Do you anticipate that's going to be able to increase the level of spending for the Switchbacks? Because I think that's the number one thing that prevents the Switchbacks from getting that depth is the owner deep pockets. Will that stadium help increase that budget?
Yeah, that is the huge question mark. So the question really is, does Colorado Springs, the city, have an appetite for a professional soccer team? Or are we always just going to be dealing with that fervent core of 3,000, 3,500, maybe 4,000 people? Because this is a stadium that's going to seat 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
And it needs to be at least half full, ideally 3/4 full every home game. The Sky Sox just recently left town, which means the Switchbacks are now the only pro sports ticket in the city. And I think the city do need to get behind them. The Reagans have invested pretty heavily, not just in the club, but in their commitment to the community and in those ties, associating the club with the infrastructure here in town. And, people always complain they could spend more, they could do more. But you look how hard they've worked to bring in sponsors and corporate support. They've done a pretty good job by and large. And I think it's the proof of that pudding, Harry, is going to be in the eating. Do I think the city has the ability to do that? Do I think they have the ability to fill that stadium and really help drive this club to the next level through the funding that will bring? Sure. Will they?
That's the question.
Mm. Yeah, I think a lot of clubs have felt that way and wondered the same thing. So, with you there. Goose, it's your turn, buddy. You told us a little bit about the possible Uptown Stadium. How are your fans, and what do you see? What's your favorite thing about your club? Oh, Goose.
He has nothing good to say about his team.
I'm so sorry, buddy. I know on Twitter he is at the Soccer Goose. Mark, I guess you kind of listed yours at the top of the show.
It's at Al, like loser, W like winner, OS like oh shit, we lost again, _ COS, which is the abbreviation for Colorado Springs. So at Al WOS _ COS.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for joining us tonight and talking about your teams. I hope you feel, I don't know, I probably didn't help you guys feel better. Do you feel any better?
Did I get a win?
Everyone.
I was promised 3 points at the end of this. How do I get my 3 points?
Wait, we lost to the Springs, so that makes us never mind.
Honorary 3 points from the USL show. Thank you guys again. That's the end of the show. Oh, I got to read the ads. I cannot forget that. Thanks to our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf supplier of MLS, USL, and US Soccer. Get custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. Speaking of, the USL show is looking into scarves. I think we're going to do scarves pretty soon, and I think we're going to try to do a pre-order so that we can hopefully afford to get it the minimum amount. I'm not sure what the interest is here, but I thought I'd start drumming up support for that. And so it'll be the USL show on one side and then the corrections department on the other side for our little chat room that we got going. Our other sponsor is Golden Goal Press. It's a print shop that produces custom shirts, sweatshirts, hats, mugs, stickers, flags, shoes, jewelry, towels. List goes on and on and on with all kinds of different options there. They can do single orders or large orders at a fraction of the cost of other online print shops. And shortly, they'll be able to do custom supporter or organization pages on top of that. So you can get in touch with Golden Goal Press. If you just want your logo slapped on something, they're like the best place to go. It's real easy, and you have way too many options, to be honest with you. So please look them up. Thanks for supporting us. Thanks for looking into all the beautiful Game Network shows. Listen in next week. We'll be back to normal again at the normal time on YouTube or in the podcast. Bye-bye, everybody.
I felt your last read. I was listening.